The evening was supposed to be magical. Cleo Armanda stood on the balcony of the Hartono family mansion, overlooking the glittering lights of Aurora City. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the delicate sapphire necklace Adrian had gifted her just hours earlier. Inside, the engagement party was in full swing. Guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos laughed and sipped champagne. In the center of it all, Adrian Hartono, the heir to the Hartono Empire, looked radiant with pride. But something was wrong. The air grew tense as a sudden murmur ran through the crowd. Cleo's heart pounded as she spotted Mira Armanda, her own mother, striding towards the stage, her face pale with fury. Without waiting, Mira seized the microphone. "My daughter," she announced coldly, "is not fit to marry into the Hartono family. She is a disgrace." Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Adrian froze, his glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the marble floor. Cleo's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But her legs felt cemented to the ground. Leon and Helena Hartono exchanged a glance but said nothing. Their silence spoke volumes. Cleo looked at Adrian, searching for any sign that he would defend her. For a moment, their eyes locked. Then he turned away. Shame scorched her cheeks as she fled the room, her heels clicking furiously against the cold stone. Behind her, laughter and whispers followed like cruel shadows. Under the dark Aurora sky, Cleo made a vow. One day they would all regret this. She would not be broken. She would rise higher than they could ever imagine. And when she did, they would beg for her forgiveness. But she would never grant it. Never. The world did not stop when Cleo Armanda's dreams shattered. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Each one passed like a cruel whisper reminding her of the humiliation she had endured. Cleo left Aurora City behind, her heart carrying nothing but scars and a furious promise. She moved to a small gray apartment at the edge of Northbridge, far from the glittering circles she once belonged to. She worked endless shifts at a downtown coffee shop, serving smiles to strangers while swallowing her bitterness. Every coin she saved was a weapon forged for the future she envisioned. Late at night, she studied business, marketing, psychology. She devoured every book she could find. Her hunger was insatiable. One evening, as she walked home under the pale streetlights, she spotted an advertisement on a crumpled flyer. "Start your own business with zero capital." Most people would have laughed and walked away. But Cleo stopped. She pulled the flyer off the post, heart racing. It was a start. Months blurred together. She failed. She stumbled. She was mocked. But she never stopped. Slowly, through sheer will and ruthless determination, Cleo built an online boutique. At first it was nothing. A few sales, a few reposts. But she studied trends, anticipated desires. She learned to speak the language of dreams. Soon, her brand, Celine Aurora, became a whisper among influencers. Then it became a roar. Investors started calling. People who had once turned their backs now lined up to meet her. Yet Cleo remained ice-cold, polite but distant. One night, in her modest office, Cleo received an invitation to an exclusive gala. The Hartono family would be attending. Fate had finally come full circle. Cleo stood by the window, the city sparkling below her. She was no longer the girl who ran away in shame. She was a storm about to break loose. And Aurora City would never be the same again. The grand ballroom of the Celestia Hotel gleamed under 1,000 chandeliers. The air was thick with the scent of power, perfume, and politics. Cleo stepped out of the black limousine, every inch of her wrapped in an elegant dark sapphire gown. She moved like smoke, untouchable, hypnotic. Inside, whispers followed her like shadows. Who is she? She looks dangerous. Cleo caught sight of familiar faces, faces that once laughed when she fell. There was Luciana Hartono, radiant in crimson silk, laughing too loudly. There was Vincent Hartono, speaking with arrogant ease, oblivious to the storm about to strike. Cleo did not approach them immediately. No, the art of revenge demanded patience. She made her rounds, speaking politely to investors, artists, politicians. Her name carried weight now. Her every word was a promise wrapped in silk. Then, the moment arrived. Vincent Hartono turned, his smile fading as his eyes locked onto hers. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Cleo! Armanda? he stammered, disbelief cracking his voice. Vincent, she said smoothly, as if greeting an old acquaintance she barely remembered. Luciana, sensing something amiss, hurried over. Her eyes widened, horror creeping across her flawless face. Cleo offered her hand to Vincent, forcing him to shake it, forcing him to acknowledge her. His palm was damp. Hers was cold as marble. You're looking well, Vincent managed, clearing his throat. As are you, Cleo replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. The conversation was hollow, strained. Every word was a needle. Every silence, a blade. Cleo excused herself gracefully, leaving them standing like fools in a hall they once ruled. From the corner of the room, she watched them unravel. Luciana clung to Vincent's arm, whispering furiously. Vincent glanced around, lost, nervous. The mighty Hartonos, once untouchable, now looked small. Cleo sipped her champagne slowly, savoring the first taste of victory. But this was just the beginning. Tonight was not about forgiveness. It was about showing the world that Cleo Armanda had returned. And she had returned to conquer. Cleo's nights grew busier. In the days that followed the gala, her presence rippled across Jakarta's elite circles. Rumors bloomed like poisonous flowers. Some called her the Phoenix. Some whispered darker names. Meanwhile, Cleo worked behind the curtains. She sent silent messages. She arranged secret meetings. She hired discreet investigators. One name surfaced again and again. Arvind Sediawan. Vincent's trusted right hand. The man who handled their most sensitive affairs. If Vincent and Luciana had skeletons, Arvind guarded the graveyard. Cleo arranged a chance meeting. At a quiet cafe tucked away in Menteng, she sipped her latte as Arvind approached, confused and cautious. He had aged badly, lines etched deep into his face. Miss Armanda, he greeted stiffly. Call me Cleo, she said, smiling like a spider before the kill. They talked. Small things at first. The weather. Traffic. But Cleo had patience sharper than any blade. Soon, Arvind began to relax. The old loyalty he had to Vincent? It cracked. Greed had replaced it. With careful questions and casual promises, Cleo learned everything she needed. Embezzlement. Bribery. Affairs. False contracts. Vincent and Luciana's empire was a castle built on sand. And now, Cleo had the map to every crack in its foundation. As she left the cafe, the cloudy sky above threatened rain. Cleo welcomed it. There was something delicious about the storm. It matched the one she was about to unleash. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about taking everything. Brick by rotten brick. Vincent noticed it first. Tiny disruptions. Whispers among his employees. Delays with payments. Subtle hesitations during meetings. He told himself it was nothing. Stress. Coincidence. But the cracks were growing wider. One afternoon, he stormed into his private office, slamming the door behind him. Luciana followed, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. You're being paranoid, she said, adjusting her silk scarf. Vincent stared at her. Someone is moving against us, he growled. Someone smart. Luciana laughed, but her fingers tightened around her clutch. She felt it too. Calls were going unanswered. Suppliers renegotiating. Bankers growing cold. The empire they had built with blood and betrayal was trembling. And they didn't even know the enemy's name. Meanwhile, Cleo worked in silence. With Arvind's files in hand, she planted seeds of destruction. She leaked documents anonymously to authorities. She contacted journalists who had been silenced years ago. Old enemies of Vincent and Luciana rose from the shadows, hungry for revenge. It was a beautiful orchestration. A slow, elegant collapse. One night, as Vincent drank whiskey alone in his penthouse, his phone buzzed. A single message. You took everything from me. Now watch me take it all back. There was no signature. No sender. Just the promise of ruin. For the first time in years, Vincent felt a chill that no amount of money could warm. Somewhere out there, a ghost he had created was coming for him. And he had no idea how to stop it. Cleo watched from a distance as the empire crumbled. Every report she read, every headline she saw, was another crack in Vincent's perfect image. Yet she wasn't satisfied. Not yet. It was time to strike closer. One evening, dressed in a simple gray coat and dark glasses, Cleo slipped into a charity gala hosted by one of Vincent's shell companies. She moved like a shadow among the rich and oblivious. No one noticed her. Not even Luciana, who smiled and posed for cameras, her necklace gleaming under the chandelier lights. Cleo's heart pounded. This was the world that had spat her out like trash. And now she was inside it. Among the wolves. A waiter passed by, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Cleo palmed a tiny device under the napkin on the tray. A recorder. Hidden. Silent. Ready. Hours later, in a private lounge, Vincent met with a senator. The conversation was casual at first. Then darker. Discussions about money. Favors. Threats. All captured perfectly by Cleo's device. When she retrieved it, slipping it into her pocket like a whisper, she knew it was enough to destroy him. The walls were closing in. The newspapers the next day were merciless. Corruption scandals. Investigations launched. Anonymous tips flooding the police. Vincent slammed his fists against the marble counter, roaring with rage. Luciana smashed a crystal vase, screaming at her assistants. Their perfect kingdom was collapsing, and they were powerless to stop it. From her tiny flat across town, Cleo watched the chaos unfold on her old television. A small smile played on her lips. It was almost time to reveal herself. But not yet. Not until Vincent and Luciana had lost everything. Not until they were as broken as she had once been. Vincent's days became a blur of lawyers, frantic phone calls, and desperate meetings behind closed doors. He barely slept. Luciana was no better. Her glamour vanished, replaced by trembling hands and haunted eyes. The mansion that once stood proud on the hills now felt like a tomb, heavy with silence and fear. And Cleo? Cleo was ready. She had waited long enough. One misty morning, Vincent received a package. No return address. Inside was a single object. A photograph. It was old, a little torn at the edges. It showed a younger Cleo, battered, scared, sitting alone on the hospital bed. Written on the back in sharp ink. You should have helped me. You chose to destroy me instead. Vincent's hands shook. He knew. He finally knew. The ghost he had created had come back to claim him. At that moment, his world, already fragile, shattered completely. He staggered to his study, pulled open the hidden safe behind a painting. Empty. Everything he had hidden, the documents, the accounts, the proof of his dirty deals. Gone. Stolen. Or perhaps, collected. Collected by Cleo. Panic seized him. He ran to Luciana's room. Gone too. No note. No message. Just silence. Luciana had fled. Left him to burn alone. Across the city, Cleo stood in front of a tall glass building. It was the headquarters of a powerful newspaper. In her hand, she held a thick envelope. Inside were copies of every crime Vincent had committed, every person he had crushed. She handed it to the editor without a word. And then, for the first time in years, she stepped into the sunlight, free. She didn't need to see Vincent's arrest. She didn't need to hear his cries for mercy. It was over. He was broken. And she had rebuilt herself from the ruins. Without him. Without any of them. Her revenge was complete. But more than that, her freedom was won. The world moved on without Vincent Devereux. His downfall was splashed across every newspaper. His photograph, once the symbol of untouchable power, now accompanied words like corruption, betrayal, and justice served. But Cleo didn't linger to savor it. She had other plans. With her portion of the money she had earned through smart investments and careful planning, not theft, she disappeared into a quiet town by the sea. No one there knew her name. No one whispered behind her back. For the first time in years, Cleo breathed without fear. The salty air filled her lungs. The crash of the waves sang in her ears. Every morning, she walked along the shoreline, the wet sand cool under her bare feet. And every morning, she left behind the footprints of a woman reborn. The scars Vincent and Luciana had carved into her life would never fully fade. But they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders. Reminders that she had survived. That she had won. One afternoon, Cleo sat at a small cafe, sketching. The owner, an old woman with kind eyes, brought her tea without asking. "You're not from around here, love," she said with a soft smile. "No," Cleo replied. "But maybe I'll stay." The woman smiled wider. "No maybes about it, dear. You're exactly where you're meant to be." And for the first time, Cleo believed it. She smiled, real and unforced. The sun dipped lower into the horizon, casting the ocean in shades of gold and rose. A new chapter. A real one. Written not by revenge, not by betrayal, but by hope. And Cleo would write it one sunrise at a time. Free. Finally truly free.